So let's go ahead and start by diving into talking about liquidity lockers, because this has not only been the most adopted software from UniCrypt, but on top of that is probably the most valuable tool that was well overdue within the crypto ecosystem. So first off, before we talk about liquidity lockers, which might sound a bit overwhelming at the start, let's go ahead and try to understand first what liquidity providers are, LPs. Now, you've probably heard this term tossed around within the crypto space. If you ever utilized Uniswap, SushiSwap, or any type of decentralized exchange or decentralized exchange aggregator, you have benefited from liquidity providers. It is a means of providing the liquidity required for both sides of the pair. In this case, we're looking at a token pair between USDC and Ethereum in order to allow people to swap through automated market makers like Uniswap from one asset to another. So when you're a liquidity provider, you're providing an equal weight of tokens from each side of the trading pair in order to allow for there to essentially be liquidity for people to trade from one side to another. The more liquidity there is, the less slippage there is, and the more trading volume will likely be within the liquidity pool. So people are pooling their funds together in a liquidity pool or smart contract to allow for people to take one token to another and trade from one side to the other side of the trade. It's a really great service, and overall liquidity provision and AMMs are the biggest use case of crypto. Not only is it exciting for the end user who wants to swap from one token to another, but on top of that you can actually earn fees from the protocol that are paid to the liquidity providers from the end user. So this is a way where you're able to sit on two different types of assets and potentially make a return in the long term. Now, this is something that has existed here for a long period of time. And when you provide that liquidity position, you're essentially sending your ERC20 tokens, in this case USDC, and your core Ethereum tokens to the liquidity pool, and in exchange you get a LP token. This is effectively an IOU. It's a claim that at any time you can utilize to go out and withdraw your funds from the pool. And that should be a given. You should be able to withdraw those funds at any given time because they're your funds as an end user. However, when it comes to an overall project, or those who are incentivized to be long-term participants and should be rewarded for doing so, this is where liquidity lockers come into play. And they allow us to have better transparency for team tokens, for the tokens and the funds raised that are designated for providing liquidity and allowing for ample trading, and essentially can help, albeit never fully prevent, rug pulls within the crypto space. A big issue. Now, if you guys don't know this, we've talked about rug pulls on the channel before. It has been an over $2.9 billion issue last year alone. I don't even want to go into the full metrics for 2021, but I bet the team at UniCrypt will probably tell you it was probably even worse in 2021, as there was absurd amounts of money and speculation. And unfortunately, there are no things other than the negative incentives for this to persist within the space. So this is why we're starting to see UniCrypt's core technology lead towards a lot of TVL here. Even during a period of time when over the past year we've been in a bear market, the TVL that's been locked within UniCrypt has not only remained relatively strong, but we can see that there are over 23,000 liquidity lockers created and major traction going into the later part of 2022 and the start of 2023. It is very clear by now that this technology is needed and it can be very valuable. But how does it really work? And again, let's go ahead and talk about why this is something that could be very valuable for the crypto ecosystem. Well, let's go ahead and draw an example here. So we've got the liquidity provider. Let's say in this example, it's you. You have some Ethereum, you have some stable coins that you've converted from dollars into USDC. And now you want to be able to earn some fees on those two assets that you're just passively holding over time. Well, you can provide liquidity to a pool in Uniswap. And what's great about that is that, as we talked about before, you'll be given the LP tokens that will be brought back to you from the liquidity pool that serve as an IOU claim. But again, as an end user, this is a freedom that you should likely have, unless you're incentivized to provide that liquidity and are given some kind of farming yield for providing that liquidity long term that you're willing to take the risk on. But in the case of a token project which has a team, might have investors, or people who have made it clear that they want to provide liquidity in order to allow for investors to feel confident and participate in the ecosystem, well, the problem is if they have the same freedom to do so, they could essentially essentially commit a rug pull. So if they're able to withdraw that liquidity like you are, then it may be that at the end of the day, you're holding a bunch of tokens that are not going to have any real market value or liquid value where you can trade from one asset to another. This is just one of the major reasons why liquidity lockers are a big deal. Because essentially with liquidity lockers, in that example, the liquidity is not, so to speak, liquid. It is locked for a pronounced period of time, dependent on how the tokens are locked or the LP position is locked. So essentially, once those tokens have been provided to the liquidity pool, the tokens themselves, which act as the claim to withdraw them, are locked for a certain window of time. They are not available for the LP to go out and withdraw. Now again, in this example, imagine that this is the team or investors or certain participants who should have an incentive to provide long-term value, continue building utilities for the token, building within the ecosystem of that token. This already makes it very clear and transparent and verifiable on-chain that the team has a long-term incentive or a much better incentive to deliver on its promises, to continue building, and so that you as an investor will not only not be likely rug pulled, but on top of that, be able to have the ample liquidity guaranteed over a certain period of time where you can trade in and out and feel comfortable about having an investment in that position. So again, although there's no guarantee of anything, the liquidity provision locker will allow for the guarantee that there will be some amount of liquidity within the pool, the specified amount. Now, this is really exciting stuff. If you guys are interested to dive into some of the documentation about how you can participate with liquidity lockers, because an individual could do this, but also more importantly, it's about getting the projects that you like out there to learn about this technology, learn as to how it can benefit the trust and the lack of needed trust in the protocol, but on top of that as well, could boost value to the tokens, and it is a way that you can also earn income as you bring projects within the UniCrypt ecosystem. So the end users and investors in different types of projects would obviously benefit from this technology because there's guaranteed liquidity that allows them to trade in and out of their positions, ideally with low slippage, and guaranteeing at the end of the day that there's likely not going to be at least a lower likelihood of a rug pull. But on top of that as well, you're able to get a whole range of different referral income benefits from bringing people to the protocol. If you bring a project to the protocol, they'll not only get a 10% discount on the flat fee charge for liquidity lockers, but on top of that, you can earn up to over 0.01 ETH or 0.04 BNB for referring that project through your unique referral link. I highly recommend you guys check this out. It's a great way to not only make sure that the projects you're investing in are setting in high standards for their liquidity and making sure that you are going to be positioned in plays that have a better likelihood of succeeding long term, but on top of that, it's a way where you can make some really solid income from bringing projects to this better standard when it comes to providing liquidity. However, big thing I want to emphasize here, and this is something that even the UniCrypt team is very candid about. It doesn't mean just because a project is using liquidity pool lockers or this liquidity locker technology that there can't be scams, that a project has strong fundamentals just because it uses liquidity lockers. It could be a failing project in the long run. It could be a project with negative intentions. And there are other ways where projects can still run away with the money, essentially. So it is an improved technology overall for the crypto space, but it's not a guarantee of anything. Overall, it guarantees one key thing, which is that there will be liquidity for you to be able to trade in and out of a position. So long as the team uses things like the token vesting technology that UniCrypt offers, where you can see transparently that team members, investors have tokens that aren't going to be able to be just dumped on the overall AMM, such as Uniswap, through the liquidity pool, then if you have things like token vesting in play, you have the liquidity lockers in play, you can start to feel really confident that the projects that you're looking at that follow these and utilize these technologies likely have long-term ambitions, or at least are in the better pool of projects out there versus a lot of the noise and trash that just goes on in the crypto ecosystem. The UniCrypt team knows this better than anyone, and you guys know it here if you've been in the crypto space for some time. Having these additional layers of transparency can filter out a lot of the noise, and if a project is hesitant to use smart contract token vesting or utilize the liquidity locking tool for UniCrypt, that could be a big red flag that the project does not have long-term intentions, or at least isn't using some kind of similar software tools. However, UniCrypt is one of the best out there when it comes to these services, and they've been market leaders, as you can very clearly see through the rate of adoption.